What's going on, rock stars? Hey, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Unscripted, where we bring you the raw and unscripted truth about what's going on in life and designed to help you ditch your excuses and your tolerations to live a kick-ass, unstoppable life. I am your host, Christopher Rausch, also known as the No Excuses Coach, and I appreciate you for tuning in and joining us wherever it is that you might be in the 20-plus countries that we are fortunate to be in. Thank you so much. And just for those of you guys that are listening on the podcast, every single week on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we do a live video cast, and the live video cast is designed for you guys to participate in the conversation with us in the comments so that you can ask questions, you can engage with us. So it is a conversation with you, not at you. And we've been doing the show now for 5 years, and I'm super excited for what the next 5 years are going to contain. Every single week, it's my intention to bring you guys valuable information and strategies that you can apply in your life every single week. So when you think about it, if there's a show a week and there's 52 weeks in a year, and you think about taking 3 strategies from each show, just imagine how much different your life could be in 6 months to a year. And so many times we want the overnight answer, but you got to think about it in this way. This is where you've got to in your life, whether you're 30 years old, 60 years old, whatever it is that you might be, it's taken you a little bit of time to get to this moment. And so what we encourage you to do is we encourage you to take that imperfect action every single day and fail your way to success. Right? When you think about the things in your life, and so oftentimes we're running from our problems and our situations, but I encourage you to run towards those, because that's where we grow and that's where we thrive. And that's where we really learn about the lessons of life. Because when you think about it, when have you learned and grown the most? When things were easy or when things were challenging? Of course, when things were challenging. And tonight's conversation is going to be a little bit challenging. It's designed to be a little bit different than what we normally do here on the Raw and Unscripted show. We want to reach and impact humanity, obviously, here on the Raw and Unscripted show. But tonight is a little bit more of a direct exposure to what's going on in the world today, especially here in the United States. I know we have people listening all over the world, and thank you very much for that. But here in the United States, we have a political election process coming up. I think in some like 50 days, we're going to elect a new president of the United States. And in case you've been living under a rock, there's been a lot of, spirited conversations about the 2 different candidates that we have going on here in the United States. And it's causing, in some situations, it's causing a huge divide. It's causing people to alienate their family. It's causing them to alienate their friends. It's causing name calling. It's causing a lot of pain and suffering that doesn't really need to happen. And I can tell you this from my perspective, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my life. And for those of you guys don't know, I was a 7th grade dropout, and I had a horrible experience from 13 to 17. And then ultimately I made some different decisions and got around the right people. And in order for me to be where I'm at today, having this amazing life, the biggest lesson I really had to learn was to seek first to understand, then be understood. And I grew up with a mother who always had to be right and always wanted to be understood and never really gave a shit about what other people thought or what their opinions or whatever other opportunities there were to see something differently. It was her way or the highway. And I grew up in that environment. And for me, it was easy for me to adapt to that type of lifestyle and that personality. But in order for me to have true, real success, I listened to smart people who were successful and more successful than other people in my life. And that was one of the greatest valuable lessons that I learned, was just to shut up and listen. Shut up and listen and ask questions and ask more about where that person's perspective and where their experiences are coming from. Because I'm going to invite you to think about it in this way. And this is what helped me. Whoever it is you might be talking to, and whoever it is you might be disagreeing with, put yourself in their situation. If you had grown up when they grew up, with the parents that they grew up with the inputs that they grew up with the influences they grew up with, the television, the movies, the whatever it might be, the conversations that they grew up with, might you be like them? And for me, I had to put that perspective on in dealing with my mother, because I had so much anger and animosity towards my mother for not doing such a great job in raising me. That I had that anger and that resentment. But when I was taking a step back and I realized, if I had grown up in 1942 as a female to parents who were in their early 20s, et cetera, might I be like her? And it was a tough decision. It was a tough pill to swallow for me to say yes. And immediately when I said that, I had more empathy and sadness and understanding for my mother than that anger and that animosity, because it forced me to sit there and say, okay, there's different ways of looking at something. There's different ways of experiencing something. And that's what's kind of going on in the world today. So it's our goal and our focus in this conversation. I'm going to be bringing on 2 magnificent, amazing souls who are in my life. We're going to be talking about not the politics of what's going on, but the humanity of what's going on, and invite you to shift your perspective a little bit. If you might be one of those people out there that's saying, okay, if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. You know, it's just a matter of shifting that perspective and having a different understanding and empathy and respect for the process of what's going on, because sometimes it might be a little bit deeper than the politics that we're facing. And I think that's some of the things that we're going to discover tonight in the conversation. So I encourage you, if you guys are watching live or on the replay here on the video cast, feel free to type in questions, feel free to engage with us, what your perspective might be, because again, this is a conversation with you, not at you. And we've already got Crystal Rye in the house. What's up, Crystal? Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. With that, I'm going to be introducing a dear two friends of mine, two amazing friends of mine. One of them is Mr. Walt McKinley, Mr. Walt McKinley, waltmckinley.com. Check him out. And then also my friend Daniel Echevarria, and Dano, Daily Dose of Dano TV. I was just recently on his show. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to the conversation. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, fired up, man. Let's get into this one.
Let's get into this one. And the reason why I have you both on the show is because it's not because, and people might be sitting there saying, you know, well, Christopher invited people on who think the same way. And tonight we're going to be talking about groupthink and confirmation bias. But Walt and I have different opinions and different perspectives on things. Dano and I had a great conversation last week on his show. So the reason why I have these gentlemen on here is because they force me to think differently. They ask me questions to make me shift my perspectives about that. And that's what we need in this world. We don't want to be siloed with, you know, the people we necessarily agree with. So my question to both of you to kick this off tonight is, what do each of you want to get across most to the people listening and watching tonight? What is the thing you want them to walk away from this conversation thinking about the way I prefaced and framed up the show?
Walt, take it away. You got it.
Walt, you go first.
I think the biggest thing is, man, we're seeing so many people, families lose relationships with each other right now. We've been seeing this probably the last 3 election cycles. We're seeing friends lose friendships with each other. We're seeing people call each other stupid, fucking idiots, like whatever, name it, right? The name calling is at an all-time high. And we're losing intimate, special relationships with people that we really love the most in our life for people who could care less about us. The reality is, politics is meant to divide people. That's why, you know, back in the day, what would they say? You don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics. And you didn't talk about those things because all it did was cause a divide. Christopher, you said it. Our life experiences all flow into how we think from a day-to-day perspective. The goal of the media right now and the fueling of the flame of divide that they continue to push on all of us is meant to take a small 30 to 60 second snippet of something that we might actually believe to be true and spin it in a way that just pisses us off, because a country that's divided is a country that's controllable. And during this, I want to talk about some things that happened in Yugoslavia back when all the Eastern Bloc countries became independent, because we are replicating what happened there as they went from communism into socialism. And had a coup in the country. We are doing the same type of things that are going to cause a civil war, because we can't step outside of the day-to-day. We can't step outside of the rhetoric from whatever news station we watch, because they're all biased. And we can't realize, hey, this is bigger than all of us. This is about loving each other, because regardless of who's been in office over the last 50 years, with the exception of a little tweak and what they think from liberal or conservative side, we get the same thing. And that's the middle class being screwed and being pushed down and not being allowed to be prosperous, by the rich and the elites continue to grow the divide between us, because then we're controllable. So until we realize that and step aside and say, hey, man, maybe they are actually doing some of that. Maybe I need to step back and realize the people that I love the most and those relationships that I love the most, I'm going to value those over what Fox or CNN or MSNBC or somebody's TikTok clip of a 30-second video says that I should do. And that's what I'm excited to talk about tonight.
I love it. I love it. A lot of the same stuff I took notes on. Dano, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What do you want to get across most to people tonight that are watching and listening?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for everybody for tuning in, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Now, I'm not going to go in the same. I see Walt's done his homework. I don't have any specific, examples that I can point to, but Chris, when we were talking about it, you just mentioned two things. So the 2 points that I want to talk about is, number one, everything is deeper than what we're facing. A lot of the experiences and things that are going in our outside world, ultimately they're a reflection of everything that goes on in our inside world. So a lot of the time that we think that we're mad at somebody for something that they said or that they did, they're not really mad at that person. it goes a little bit deeper beyond that. And a great example is there was somebody, I think I told you this before, but I'm going to share it with the audience. There was somebody last year that I had that was wanted to give me a job. And I, you know how we are, we're entrepreneurs, we have our shows and we want to work for ourselves. So I was like, let's test it out. Let's see. So little by little, this guy just kept pushing off the date that he wanted to hire me. Then, he said it was this roadblock and it was that roadblock. And eventually it just happened so long that it was actually, I think, the course of 8 months, which thankfully I wasn't really, feeling it anyway, but I just wanted to kind of test it out. And the more that I would talk to this person, the more resentment and the more, not really anger, but, just disappointment that I had with this person. And it took a little bit for me to realize that it wasn't about the other person at all. It was about me and how I was letting people treat me and how I was letting that individual treat me. So like you said, it's deeper than what we're facing. And number two is, I know, Chris, we talked about this before, and I know Walt and everybody else can feel this. People are being affected by this. And I know, Chris, you and I, we are really conscious and really intentional about what we digest, right? Whether that's physically with food, whether that's mentally with the news media, and then spiritually with all the battles that we have going on. If we are feeling this type of way, that means this is penetrating us. And imagine all the thousands and millions of people out there that aren't as conscious as we are about what we digest. That just means, like Walt said, that's just fueling that divide. So I noticed that it was getting closer and really penetrating my overall mental state and well-being. So I want everybody out there to realize that, yes, it may be going on in the world, but you don't have to succumb to the negativity and the division that is going out there in the world. But instead, we need to focus more about what's going on in our inner world. And once we combat that, there's nothing that can happen in this world that is going to bring us down, that is going to, there's going to be things that are try, of course, and not everything's all rainbows and sunshines and butterflies, but we need to be more conscious and take better care of our inner world.
Amen. You both guys, I could swear to God, the notes that I took on thinking about this particular discussion, you guys both hit on the same exact area. So like minds attract. And I truly believe in what you both said, as far as, there's a deeper meaning, there's a deeper situation that's going on here. I asked my coach, she lives in New Zealand. She's a brilliant, brilliant person. And I asked her, I don't know, I said, it was a couple of months ago. And I said, what do you think the thing about politics really is? Is it really about the political process? Is it really about the candidates, or is it something deeper within ourselves? The way I look at it, guys, is when I'm dealing with somebody who has a situation, I go back to who are they as a kid. I sit there and I picture them as little boys and little girls. And I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? Because as we know, a lot, or some of you guys may not know, we become the people we're going to become between the ages 0 and 5. Our belief systems and everything are shaped by the inputs that we have, and then we carry on, and our actions kind of feed back that loop until we stop and say, okay, listen, I'm going to shift my beliefs. I'm going to shift what it is that I'm focusing on, because where energy goes, where focus goes, energy flows. So if we're focusing on these things, but she said, yes, absolutely, without a doubt, it's a bigger situation, a representation, like you said, Dano, that it's something within ourselves. And so the thing I just want to, before I ask you guys the next question, I just want to say Crystal's in the house. We got Stephanie McKinley in the house. Stephanie, we send love to you and your mom. Godspeed. Hopefully everything gets, she gets better, and we're thinking about her, and we got her in our prayers. We got Hooked on Humanity. We got Nellie in the house. She says, hello all. Let me say that again. Hello all. And she says, great subject tonight. So thank you for being here, and feel free, guys, to ask us any questions as we're talking. But going back to the deeper meaning in that, let's go deeper on that. And I'm gonna go to you, Walt, first. What do you really think when you think about the political process and why people are picking either candidate or advocating for certain things? Where do you think that really comes from a deeper perspective within ourselves, from a psychological standpoint, not a political standpoint?
Well, I think first, like you said, it's how we were raised, experiences that we've had, the things that we prioritize in our life, because each of us are different, right? Even if we think similar about things, how we prioritize them looks different. And so the content that we're taking in is going to have a direct effect on whether or not we align or disagree with it. And it's funny because I can tell you right away if somebody watches the news and what news station they watch based upon what they say. I mean, it's so overtly obvious that it's disgusting. Yep. And it's like they'll never call their own party out, but they'll always call the other one out, right? And that's why it's meant to divide us. But you know what I started asking myself, bro, is like, How is it serving me? So I get fired up, right?
That's a great question.
I was an intelligence officer for 2 decades. I like research. I like to look into things. I like to be knowledgeable, and then I like to make an educated decision. That was my life. And I watched the news for 20 years because it was part of my job. And it's funny, before I came in here, there was a commercial on. 6 commercials during a commercial break. 4 were political ads. None of the political ads said what they were going to do great for America. It always said how the other person sucked.
Yes.
Most, right? And 2 of them were pharmaceutical ads.
Yeah, I knew it.
The ones where like you get killed 40 times, but it helps one thing. Like
right.
Pharmaceutical ad, right? And I thought to myself, like, man, if I'm not conscious, and Dano, you said this, like if we raise our level of consciousness, then we're going to be more self-aware of this. And emotional, and my wife talks about this all the time, Stephanie, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence is such an underrated and underutilized skill.
Agreed.
I tell you, bro, like it's so easy to watch that and then just start, you could feel it inside of yourself, even though I know better. So I really watch what I take in. I don't watch the news. I do read some news. I don't read Fox. I don't read CNN. I'll read Reuters. I'll read BBC. I'll even read some Al Jazeera because they're the most unbiased places to get some news. The other ones are so politically driven and biased that I find myself looking more like identity politics, right? Like, what do I agree with the most? I'm going to run in that direction because it feels the best. And I think when you talk about the political landscape, that's what we're doing. It's identity politics. It's if they're talking about a woman's right to choose. Well, of course, most women are going to gravitate towards that because they believe a woman should have a right to choose, right? And you're going to get other people that do too. If they're talking about racial equality, well, depending on what you identify with, you're going to run right towards the racial equality conversation. If they're talking about how the economy is the most important and you're broke, well, guess what? You're going to be paying attention to the economy. If I'm still in the military and they're talking about building up military strength and taking care of military people, well, guess what I'm going to gravitate to the most? That. And I think what's happening right now is we're so focused on identity politics versus really being able to realize that it's meant to divide us, realize that all they're doing is amplifying hate amongst the normal part of the population, the 80-90% of us who actually agree on pretty much all of it.
Yes, Pareto principle, baby.
Because if it bleeds, it leads. And Christopher, you and I have talked a lot about this. If you put 10 liberals and 10 conservatives in the same room, just normal Joe Schmoes like all of us, right? And you're like, figure out what we should do for education. We're probably going to come up with a pretty badass plan for education. You think military, you think abortion, you think economics, you think all of these things that are driving our country forward and the divide. I promise you we would come up with things that served the extreme majority of the country.
Amen.
And you know what? Everybody, for the most part, would be okay with that, and you would eliminate the divide, but then we wouldn't be controllable. So why would we ever do something like that in our news media today or a political landscape? We won't, because they want to control.
So many points, but I'm going to shut up. I want Dano to answer the same question.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the things that Walt mentioned that I actually have written down was the identity politics as well. But I want to talk about one point before I talk about that. And it is the value that we are placing on these politics, or the value that we're assigning to them. A lot of people think so badly that whoever is in presidency or whoever sits in that seat, they have the power over their lives, and that everything that they're going to do, every decision that they're going to make is absolutely going to affect them, which we all know is false, right?
Yes.
Because as soon as that person steps into that seat, I can guarantee you the next day, things are not going to take place immediately. You know, they have to get sworn in. They have to take the time for the House of Representatives and the whole, legal process for everything to go through. So stop putting so much power on these other people and giving them the authority to rule over you, because that's what you're doing. When you are just totally immersed inside of these experiences, you believe that they are true. And that is actually what's going to happen in your life, right? Because if you were, I know Walt said it, if you're somebody who thinks that, let's just use racism, for example, that everybody's a freaking racist and that, they're going to treat you like pieces of shit and everybody's out to get you, then what do you expect is going to happen? That is what's going to happen. Number one, because that's what you are attracting into your life. And number two, when you start to believe that story that you're feeding yourself, you're going to go out there and you're going to treat people as if they're out to get you. So you are the one who's initiating this negative belief system and these negative consequences, right? Because if you really think that everybody's out to get you and that nobody really likes you, then you can't show love from that because you don't even love yourself. So how is it that we are buying into these things? And like I said, I think it's because we place too much power and we are giving these outer resources, outer people, outer experiences the power over us. And I know a big thing too, people have like a lot of anxiety or a lot of fear when it comes to this. And it's because they don't have that power over themselves. So of course they're going to have that fear because they think that everything, and they know that everything that happens in their outside world, they are a slave to that thing, whether it is politics, whether it's other people, whether it's relationships. And ultimately, we need to understand that the relationship within ourselves is the number one most important relationship, because once we understand that our value is within ourselves and we're not going to find it out here, that's when we can start to change. And then very quickly too, you guys just touched on it, was the identity politics, right? And I think that people really want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves.
Yes.
Two things. Number one, I know, Christopher, you talk about it all the time. You have Misfit Nation. I also have my supporters, which I call the Positivity Posse. And while I'm pretty sure all of your supporters as well, that's what you start to attract, right? So when people join the Positivity Posse, for example, they know that they're going to be in a safe environment where they can talk about positive topics because there's so much negativity out there. But my family, my posse, we talk about things that are, kind of the same things that you talk about, Chris. Personal development, what it takes to succeed, what are the bumps along the way that you're going to experience, what lessons have the guests learned. So when we start to understand and we want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, then we're going to go to anybody that's in the lead and that's winning, right? And it's very interesting. I can't remember the book that I read. I think it's called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And there's
I have that book. I haven't read it yet, but I had that based on somebody's recommendation.
Yeah, man, it's a really good read. And there was one thing that always stuck with me from that book. And there was somebody who won an award, and it was an actor. I don't know if it was like Kevin Bacon or somebody. It was a very, very famous actor, and they won an award. And the gentleman that wins the award, he goes, hey, I want to dedicate this to everybody that was on my team, but also everybody from my high school as well. And the author of that book thought that it was so interesting that he shouted out and say, hey, to my high school, we did it. But it's because those people that are in high school, right? Let's say one of them is an accountant and one of them is, I don't know, he works in HR. Those two people that went to high school with the person that won that award, they have that same feeling of accomplishment and success in their own lives, because in their mind, since they went to school with the guy that won the award, they're winners themselves. It's the same principle with the football teams, with your sports teams. When they win, you have a sense and feeling that you win. But what's ridiculous about that is we never step foot on the field. So how can we possibly claim victory for something that they did, which I understand, more support, all that other stuff, that's besides the point. But Chris, to answer your question, that's what it ultimately comes back to, is that we want to be a part of that winning team. But it doesn't matter if they win or your party loses or anything else in between, because at the end of the day, when we are coming home to our families and we have money to provide for our families and we have the safety, the peace, and the health, that is all that really matters at the end of the day.
Hey, Chris, before you, because I want you to answer the question here in a second, because you'll end up asking us another question. But I want to touch on something Dano said. I think that's really important. You talked about the depression and anxiety. We are at an all-time high with depression and anxiety. And if you guys don't think what we're seeing on the news constantly, that if it bleeds, it leads mentality, right? What's being
breaking news is like every fucking 10 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, right? And it's all biased anyway from whatever station you're watching. But if you want to get a good idea of where your focus is at, ultimately where your mindset is at, look at your social media feed and look at it without the bias lens. Mm-hmm. What are you liking? What are you commenting on? And also now, what are you focusing on? Even if you don't like or comment, they know how long you looked at whatever that article or picture was, even if you didn't open it. Mm-hmm. It will give you a specific lens into what's important for you. And I'll give you an example. Like Stephanie would go on Twitter sometimes, right? And she was just getting super pissed about the stuff that was on Twitter. So you know what she started doing intentionally? she started liking all the Joel Osteen stuff and motivational quotes. Do you know what her whole Twitter feed is now, or X now, I guess? It's just that. And so if you want to change your mindset, you want to change your focus, ultimately change your heart just a little bit, you got to be accountable to what you're doing and what you're taking in and the content that you continue to observe that's putting you in chaos and anxiety and depression. And the only way you dig out of that is with intentional action. And so I think that that's really important as we continue over the next, what'd you say, 40 days? I mean, you think we've been bombarded now? Just wait. It's not going to get better. We're going to keep hearing how Kamala, or the candidates that Kamala sucks, Trump sucks, everybody sucks. The whole country's going to go to hell in a handbasket, and the middle class is going to keep suffering. And if you just stay there and you just keep hearing that, your
hair will pop off your fucking shoulders.
You're going to freak out, and you're going to walk around disgruntled and pissed off, ruin relationships, not build other good ones, and then just be unhappy. So how is all these things serving you in a way that moves your life forward? They don't. So change the narrative for yourself by being intentional at what you're actually looking at.
Boom, mic drop right there. There's the microphone, and we're dropping it right there. And I want to capture a couple of things that you guys said. So I think that number one, for everybody that's watching and listening, how is this serving me? I want you guys to write that down. You guys know I'm a fan of sticky notes. Write it down, put it on your computer monitor, and just ask yourself in that moment, how is this serving me? How is this serving me? How is this serving my family? How is this serving the people that I lead, that I inspire? So I love that. Absolutely. Going to the 80-20 rule. That's one thing that I really looked at. And I talked to a couple of people about this, is I said, when you look at the Pareto principle, I sit there and I look at, and I've been all over the world. I've met a ton of people, and I'm outgoing. I'm meeting people out in the world. 80% of the people I meet, if not 95% of the people I meet out in the world, are amazing folks. Right. And we sit there and we think that the social media component of our life, and we think the news component of our life is speaking for everybody in the entire world, when it's not. There's so many people that don't even watch the news. There's so many people that don't have Facebook. There's so many people out there giving a helping hand, no matter what fucking hat you're wearing. And so I just want to make sure I clarify that, because so oftentimes, again, where that focus is going, that energy is flowing. And so I want to make sure I capture that. I got this quote, I got this statistic that I want to share, because you guys brought it up a couple times about the news. And so this is, I didn't copy down the question how I asked it, but this is the answer that I got. So I wanted to share it. The Pew Research Center found that 70% of self-described liberal Democrats and 16% of conservative Republicans trust CNN. A 54% gap between parties. However, 75% of conservative Republicans, only 12% of liberal Democrats trust Fox News, a gap of 63 percentage points. It seems that there is a very small percentage of people who trust both sources, suggesting that the majority of people who are actually politically opposed are receiving different accounts of the same events. And so I want to stem on that a little bit. Also, I did an experiment, and I invite everybody to do this experiment, whatever news you follow. And again, I used to be a self-ascribed news junkie, political junkie, probably about 10 or 12 years ago. I watched all the news. I knew all the politics, and I would go to work and I would talk with my friend. And then I decided to quit. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give myself a break. And it was the best break. And I never went back. But recently I have been challenging myself. I did it during the last election process, because people accused me of putting my head in the sand and just being happy, which is fuck. Why not be happy? And so I did an experiment. I usually watch, like you said, Walt, I look at various news sources, but I did an experiment because I told my wife to do this, and she's not going to watch this, so I can talk about her. Because I sat there and I said, I'm going to go watch all three news networks, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. And so I'm going to give it a period of time. So I'm going to watch each for a week. And again, not watching news, you could easily see I went to Fox News and I was just like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. I didn't know this was going on. I didn't know this aspect of this was going on. Then I went over to MSNBC and I'm like, oh my God, that's totally counter to what they said. And that seems to make sense. And then I went to CNN and then I started checking other news sources. And ultimately I got to the point where I'm like, this is fucking God's honest truth. I said, I don't know who to fucking believe.
Right.
I don't know who to believe. I don't know what to believe, because there's certain aspects that, depending on what answer you want, that's the answer you'll get. And so when I found that statistic, I was like, okay, I'm not really surprised. But there's one word that comes to my mind when I think about, okay, what's the deeper situation that's going on here? And I'm going to tie into what you said, Dano, is blame. As long as I can blame somebody, if I can blame the president, if I could blame Congress, if I can blame the school superintendent, if I could blame my parents, if I can blame anybody else, then that takes the responsibility off of me. Like you said, Dano, how much can the president really do? I don't know if the president's ever done much for me or not for me. I go out there and, like you said, I take my own actions. I decide that I'm going to be positive. I decide that I'm going to surround myself with people who don't bitch, piss, and moan about everything, that they challenge me on things, and that they lift and grow. We were supposed to have Jock on the show. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. I have my coach. I have mentors. I have you guys. I have constant people that are not just telling me, oh, Chris, you're so awesome. They're saying, hey, Chris, have you thought about it this way? Have you looked at this perspective? Here, read this article. Here, watch this movie. But if we sit there and we take the opportunity to blame everybody, then that takes the responsibility off of us. And we can just sit there and go, God damn it, I'm fucking miserable. And they need to do, more stuff for X, Y, and Z. But the reality of the situation, I was going to do a little bit of research on this. How much decision power does the president really have? And I'm saying that I don't know this. I'll be the first person to say I don't know, because things do have to go through Congress. And like you said, Dano, the House of Representatives, I'm not all too versed anymore on how that whole entire process works. But I know, yes, the president does have certain power. But to go back to what we were saying before, that blame, we have to take that responsibility of what we're digesting. We have to sit there and take the opportunity to say, okay, how can I look at this a little bit differently? And this is a challenge that I've given to people in the past that have had problems with somebody. And I'm like, okay, now, because you've stated everything you don't like about that person, now what would it be like if I asked you to go defend that person or go advocate for that person? What do you think would happen? And so I've done this with people, and they come back and they go, oh my God, I was focusing on all the negatives. I didn't realize how many other positives there were to that person. And I think the same exercise would apply here if we sat there and said, okay, if you're thinking you're voting for X candidate, if I asked you to take 2 weeks and just look at the other candidate and find ways that you can find how you could support that person, or what that person might do for you, or how are you aligned with that person, do you think there might be some opportunities there to shift your perspective about being so negative? Because again, where we're focusing, it comes back to us. What was the other thing I wrote down here? So those are kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Can I touch on that really quick?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. It's a conversation.
So, I mean, I just want to give you guys my opinion. I don't think that maybe you should actually look at the other person's parties or what's going on. Yes, you'll get an understanding of what their policies are. You get an understanding of what they view and what they believe. But ultimately, what are we doing when we look at the other person's parties or what their belief systems are? All we're doing is avoiding the work that we need to do within ourselves, because we're just consuming our stuff or consuming our minds with the other side stuff, right? And what we all know, that what one side is doing, the other side is going to do the same, just with that candidate or with that party. So, how is that really, what is that doing the service? Yes. Okay, let's just say you do see the other person's side of you. Okay, are you really going to change your mind? Probably not. Most of the time is no. But ultimately, we're just kind of avoiding what it is that we need to do within ourselves. And yes, it's nice to know what they're coming from and to see the other person's side, because Chris, it's not about looking about the other person's side. What you're saying, what I think you're saying, is that you'll be able to connect with that person and actually have that human connection with them. But yes, that is true. But we need to really look within ourselves to make sure that we are open to ourselves, and we are showing the loving side of everything and honoring ourselves.
But don't you guys think, really, if you went and tried to do research anyway, I'm a big research guy, right? What's even true anymore?
That's what I'm fucking saying.
I mean, you could even have, and this has happened to Joe Rogan a lot, where they've used AI and his mouth is moving to the words, but it's something that he never said.
Yep.
We don't even know what's true anymore, or what misinformation there is, or the corroboration between the different news networks that, it's been blatant to see. And Christopher, you said it. Go challenge yourself. If you're listening to this, challenge yourself in the next 3 days. Go look at news articles. There's only one really conservative news agency. It's Fox. Look at Fox and only take CNN, right? And go look at the different news articles about the same exact topic. And just look at the titles. Don't read the article. Look at the titles. You need to write them down right next to each other, and look at how it's so skewed. That we're not giving facts anymore. We're giving opinion.
Yeah,
we're giving. You're lucky if you get a partial truth at this point from anybody. And the reality is, like, special interests run all of it.
Yep.
Even the presidency, right? Without special interests, without donors, without the people that are getting favors in return, nobody gets elected.
The lobbyists, yeah.
A money machine now. And when we take the money out of politics is when we'll get some real people involved. How do you have political, people in presidents or senators or representatives of Congress? They're multi-millionaires by the time they finish, however much time they're doing in Senate, right? But they're multi-millionaires. How do you go from that as a public servant? We weren't meant to have people in there for a lifetime. But you know why they don't vote for term limits? None of them, by the way. None of them. Is because they can make too much money. So if we followed the money, we would figure out just who's really controlling it and how much of a puppet all of our politicians actually are.
Ooh, I want to take that break right now because I want to highlight what Michael just said. He just took the words out of your mouth. Said political puppets. Absolutely, 100%. I want to grab a couple of these comments. You guys have been chiming in here. We got Anthony in the house. What's up, Anthony? Thank you for joining us. Hooked on Humanity. Nelly says here, negativity exists, but it's important to understand that we don't have to receive the negativity or entertain negative thinking. We should accept the reality that there are negative people in the world, and we can remove ourselves from those associations, and we must if we want to cope with wellness. 100%. She also goes on to say, I don't watch any of those news programs. Good for you, sister. You watch the Raw Unscripted show. She goes on to say, I'm older than you are, and I've had more time to see them all. Take it from me, all those news shows suck. Yeah, I mean, they've been confirmed to be entertainment. That's the funny thing about it.
Yeah.
Anthony Morales says here, he says, government as a whole was not meant to be this big or this intrusive. I completely agree. Again, it goes back to what Walt was saying about money. Nelly comes back and says, most of the political noise is from paid propaganda assholes whose job it is to freak everyone the fuck out. Yes, because it sells medication and sells all sorts of shit. And we're going to come back to that in a second. She says, I go by what I see and hear directly from the candidates, which is good. Anthony says here, actions speak, believe what you see, not so much what they say. Yes. True. We got Michael Baker in the house. He says, do the investigation before making the accusation. I wholeheartedly agree. I have fact checked some people.
We don't want to accuse people out there because even though we may do the investigation, that doesn't give you the right to go out there and accuse people and belittle other people. So just watch out for that accusation work.
Oh yeah, no, true. I'm not about calling people names. That's one of the things that pissed me off, and that's why we're having this conversation. Anthony says, great discussion, gentlemen. We appreciate that, brother. We appreciate you being here. Nelly says, we don't know what really happens behind those doors in Washington. They appear divided, but their goal is to keep the U.S. divided, which that's going to be my next point. Michael says, do not allow what you consume to consume you.
Very true.
Wholeheartedly. And we got Jacqueline Rose in the house, my Irish sister from another mister. She says, here's the thing. I love this country too much to vote for who's running. Yeah. Well, that might be part of the situation as well. But I want to read something because I want to kind of go deeper in this for a second. The word confirmation bias kept coming up coming up in my brain. And Dano, you said that. You talked about identity politics. And that's going back to my answer about, why this is happening and what's going on is it's a relation to our identity. It's belonging to a tribe. It's belonging to something where I could say I'm a part of these people that, gives me an opportunity to be validated and whatnot. But I found this about confirmation bias, and I want to get you guys' opinion on this. It is a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one prior beliefs or values. People display this bias when they select information that supports their views, ignoring contrary information, or when they interpret ambiguous evidence as supporting their existing attitudes. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about the ego being a part of this and that identity being a part of all this? When is it really about politics, or is it about that confirmation bias and belonging somewhere?
I'll jump on this one first. So first, as a former intelligence officer, we dealt with fact. That's it, right? Here's the Russian operation that's happening right now. Here's how many days they're going to be out to sea. Here's when we think they're going to return. Here's what we know to be fact. And then we would give our follow-on assessment to that. I think what's happening now, and guys, if you guys say you haven't done this, I'm going to call bullshit. I will tell you, I have read some stuff and I'm like reading it. And this, yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, yeah. See, I knew that shit. Yep. Why? Because it confirms what I thought but it doesn't even mean I'm right. Christopher, you and I just talked about this the other day. We can have our opinions, right? And we can have what we think the good research we did that's obviously skewed because nothing is unbiased anymore. Right. We have our subconscious bias that's like already leading our feelings based upon our experiences, right? And then we have like what we're consuming that adds more bias to that. And I think people feel validated in the moment. Yep. I think people feel like, yeah, see, I knew, see, I was right. See, that person's a horrible, whatever, right? They're a liar. They're this, they're going to ruin democracy. They're going to, be the worst thing to ever happen for this country. And so I think confirmation bias is kind of a natural human tendency. That's why identity politics works. That's why people that typically are similar will hang out, right? Whether it's racially, whether it's religiously, whether it's same sex that hangs out, whatever it is, right? We tend to identify, like the three of us, right? We've all been on each other's shows. We've all like had conversations, but we're about motivation. We're about mindset. So what are we talking about when we talk? 99% of our conversations, the things that are similar between all three of us. Right. So we're always, as human beings, looking to be confirmed and validated. And I think, Dano, this goes back to your part. But if you can't be honest with yourself about what you're seeing, what you're reading, how you feel, and you're just looking to confirm, then you do have some inner work to do. And we all do. That's why we'll be growing till our last breath on this earth. But if you think that you're only looking for those things and you're being confirmed, and yep, it's so terrible on the other side, again, how do you actually feel from a day to day? Are you at home and you're all pissed off and your tone with your wife sucks and your tone with your kids suck? Because all you're doing is like you're so caught up in the political landscape and how our country's going to be ruined if this candidate or this candidate gets in, and you're ruining your relationships. I mean, come on, man, we got to be better than this. At this point, it's just bullshit. And you got to be able to take a step back and see it for what it is. We all do it. We all get riled up. We all have confirmation bias. But do you have the emotional awareness and intelligence to take a step back and say, I should probably do a little bit of work on myself and start to look at why I'm getting so pissed and why it's ruining my relationships, instead of just it's all because the other person's an asshole, without having an accountability on yourself.
Right there. Nailed it. Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the deeper meaning, like what we don't like in others is something that we don't like in ourselves. And so we need to go look in the accountability mirror and go, hey, what is a certain aspect? Where is this really coming from? Like I've talked to people on certain aspects, and they're like, the deeper feeling that I get is like, okay, we need to give it to the man. We need to give it to the people who have wronged us. We need to make up for all the things and situations that have happened in our life, which I get and I understand. But really, where's the health in that? Where's the growth in that? Dano, do you want to touch on anything Walt said before I bring up a different point?
Yeah, of course. I just want to touch a little quick thing on what you said. Yeah, when you're going out and you want to get revenge and you want to, try to wrong the people that have wronged you or show them up or do that, what place are you doing that from? Most of the time, you're doing it from a place that you are still holding on to that trauma or that wound. And then you want to go out and you want to try to do that thing that you want to do to get back at them. But honestly, you're just fighting negativity with negativity at that point. So number one, I think we need to find a positive fuel source. And that is kind of going to lead on to my next point that I want to talk about, Walt. And you, Chris, you said it too. But the question is, how is this all serving me? There is a bright spot in everything, right? Because as we all know with the yin and yang symbol, there's brightness and darkness, the darkness and the brightness. But with all of this going on, it teaches you, number one, to really learn how to think for yourself and that's number one. Number two, it teaches you to take a step back and to look at your own actions and reflect on the things that are going on in your life, whether it's happiness, sadness, and everything in between. And then finally, we need to understand that all of this stuff, that even though we are going so far into division or we're going so far, down, I don't want to say left or right because I don't want to give, a false political affiliation or anything like that. But if we are going so far down, that is just showing us how far up we can go. Because if we can do all of this in a state of division and so much separation, think about how much closer we can go together. So even though, yes, as of right now, if we look at that question to see, okay, how is this serving me? Most likely it's not. But now, since we are aware of how it's not serving us, we can spin it to see how it can serve us. And like I said, it can serve us in so many ways. But you have to come to those conclusions yourself, because me, Walt, and Chris can talk to you until we're blue in the face. But after this, program and our episode is over, what is it that you are going to do after? Because this might be a part of that media, if we're talking objectively, that I hope it's not, but this might be the thing that you've been watching for the past hour and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, but afterwards you might totally forget about it and go back to doing the things that we tried to warn you about, that we warned ourselves about, and that we experienced. So just make sure that we are taking this conversation, this beautiful conversation that Chris has set up, and the great points that Walt has set up, and all the commenters, that you guys are actually taking this further instead of just having a discussion about it.
Yes, it's talking about what you're saying in a nutshell is, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And that's what I asked myself back when I quit watching the news and politics. I'm like, what am I doing? All I'm doing is spinning myself into a frenzy. And like you said before, how is that impacting my relationships? How is that impacting my health? Right. And when we think about it, we get two choices. We can look through the lens of love or the lens of fear. And so when we're asking ourselves, am I looking through the lens of love or am I looking through the lens of fear? And I think that's super important. I want to grab a couple of these comments. Patricia says here, common sense rules. My only problem with that is I don't know what common sense is, and common sense isn't so common anymore.
Yeah.
Michael says here, principles over personalities, 100%. I mean, I think one of the things, the other aspect of the conversation we can have is it aligned with my values? What are our values? I just did this exercise with my group coaching clients, and I asked them I gave them 100 values, and I said, I want you to pick the top 10, and then I want you to pick the 5 that you live and die by. And they all came back and said, oh my God, that was so challenging, so difficult. But because I was able to pick those 5, I told them, I said, now you have a guiding light. Now you have a guiding source. Does this align with my top values? Jacqueline Rose says, sorry to say our country is going to hell in a handbasket. I disagree. God help us all. And we need God in our life to help this country back on its feet. I'll push back on that at another time, Jacqueline, but I appreciate your perspective on that. Anthony says here, echo chamber is a real thing. However, it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck. Guess what? It's a duck. It could be a duck dressed up or it could be a geese dressed up as a gut. Michael Baker says, birds of a feather flock together. We got the birds things. I'm craving chicken. Ellie says here, oh yeah, I've done that plenty. That's why I don't even read shit anymore. It just fucks me up even more. I love what Michael says here. We're all human. And the thing I've learned about that, Michael, as well, is that we're all more the same than we are different. You split us down the middle. We can share livers and hearts and all sorts of different things. There's a commonality amongst all of us. And I love what Walt said earlier. You stick us all in a room and you give us a situation, chances are we're going to come up with some pretty cool solutions. And that's ultimately what I think when I talk to people, not about candidates, I've said, what do you really want? What do you want for our country? And God is my witness, no matter they're voting for this person or that person, the ultimate things that they want are still the same. It's just a matter of how they think we should get to it. But that's where we got to stop giving up so much control to everybody else and take that self-responsibility for ourselves. What are we doing in our communities? What are we doing in our families? If we're just setting the example of bitch pissing and moaning, then we're not getting anywhere. We're not part of that solution. Like I said before, Michael says, where there's arrogance, there is ignorance. 100%. We have to all take a look in the mirror for that. Michael also says, love the person, condemn the behavior. Iron sharpens irons as we do one another. Oh, totally. So I want to go back to what you said, Walt, because I think it's super important. Why do you guys think they're trying to divide us? Like, what is the gain in dividing us? Because when I sit there and I try to give myself some answers on that, it doesn't make any sense to me that if we're more unified, there's more opportunity. If people have more discretionary income, then they're spending more, and then it's fulfilling the pipeline of opportunity rather than having just a few people that are super rich and the rest of people that are dirt poor trying to make it. What do you guys think about that? Why the divide and why the control?
Control, it's all about power and it's all about money. Mm-hmm. And if you're the haves, you don't really give a shit if the have-nots have it or not, right? That's why we're in the state our country's in right now. And what I will tell you is, and I'll send it to both of you guys when this is over. There in 2020, it was a very divided election at that point too.
Yep.
There was a woman from Yugoslavia that came out and talked about when the Eastern Bloc countries fell and the Berlin Wall fell, like what was happening after. And she talked about the divisive rhetoric and narrative that the media and the government really pushed. So they couldn't really do race at that point. Everybody's pretty much Anglo-Saxon there, right? They look the same, they smell the same, whatever. Like, so that's not a dividing point, right? You can't, like, sex wasn't really working, like male versus female, right? The one thing that they could do, because you had Christians and you had other religions in the same general vicinity, they could divide people based upon religion. What happens, state-controlled media, just like we have now, it's been proven already that the government has massaged the media to make the narrative that they wanted it to do. And it might have just came out during this election cycle and during the last one. It's been happening for a lot longer than that, regardless of if it's a Republican or Democrat in the presidential seat. They built the divide. They amplified hate amongst family, amongst friends, amongst villages, amongst towns, right? What happened is people started rioting. They started burning cities. Then they started using the military to try to subdue the population. But the military didn't really know who to subdue because everybody kind of looked oppressed at that moment. So then what happened? The country broke out into a civil war. 100,000 people were killed during the Civil War. Family members killing family members, friends, cities, villages, a whole nine, right? And then they came out with the socialist economy, which was really the goal of the regime that was in charge at the time. And I'll send it to you. When you guys watch it, you're going to be like, holy crap. Like, I've been seeing this over the last probably 20 years, but really in the last 12, probably. We are walking that same path. And the reason is, just like the oligarchs run things in the Eastern Bloc countries, in Russia, is because money is power. And the people with the money and the power will never want to relinquish it. That's why we still have a two-party system. That's why an independent really never gets a fair shot. That's why they can't even get on a debate stage, whether they're libertarian, whether they're a Democrat that became an independent, just a straight up independent. The last person to really do any real work on it was Ross Perot. And what was that, like back in the early 90s?
Fuck yeah, that was a lot of time. I voted for Ross.
That's it, right? Because why? Because you can maintain control of the power, control of the money, if you keep the population divided. And I personally think that is the ultimate goal. That's what it feels like. That's what it looks like. Because regardless who's been president, regardless if a Republican ran Congress, a Democratic ran Congress, we're still getting the same output, which is a little teeny bend based on the political viewpoint. It's the same.
So how do we break that? That was one of my questions, is thinking about you guys and thinking about, like, if you were president, I think back to 9/11. And, you know, we've always had our bickerings and whatnot here in the United States. But after 9/11, after we were essentially attacked, there was more unity. There was love. You saw American flags everywhere. And it seemed like for 6 months, we were like unified. It was truly the United States of America. And what you were just talking about, Walt, breaks my fucking heart. I watched the movie Civil War and I literally felt horribly uncomfortable because I thought, if that ever happens here, God forbid, because again, going back to that Pareto principle, I believe that 95% of all the people around here are pretty fucking cool people. If you're wearing a MAGA hat and you're having a heart attack, I don't think a Kamala Harris person is going to go, oh, fuck, he's wearing a MAGA hat, I'm not going to help him. People are going to help humanity. What is it that we can do in our own individual lives where it's not that we feed into that bullshit, that narrative, but we can make that difference? We can be that unified country without a catastrophe happening.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because Walt, you just said it best. All of these people, they want the power, they want the money because they want to have that control and rule over everybody. I agree with you 100%. But where is all of that stemming from? I believe it comes from a scarcity mindset, right? Because these people that are in power, they think that there's only a finite amount of resources or money in the world. So they're going to do everything to try to hog it up. And then nobody else can have anything else. But we need to change that mindset from negativity and scarcity to openness, love, and abundance. Because when we realize there truly is enough for all, then we won't have to worry about, oh, I need to hoard this, or I need to have control over you, or this or that. So I firmly believe that it comes with our morals and our values. And Chris, you kind of just asked it, what can we do to ever stop it? I'm going to be 1,000,000% honest. I don't ever think in our lifetime that we will be able to stop it, because you have, like you said, people that have grown up with, traumas and different experiences that we've had. And they are just so locked into that way of thinking that, I know people now that are 65, 70 years old, and these people will never change. And all the things that they believed in, they taught it down to their kids and to their grandkids. So
True.
I don't think we will be able to do it through other people. But if everybody were to take that step to realize what their morals, their values are, what their belief systems are, if we were to work on it and see the truth and the truth being that if it's not from a place of love, guidance, acceptance, peace, positivity, then that's a false belief system. And I know Walt believes in kind of the same thing I do when it comes to religion, but I believe in God and I believe in Jesus. And I do think, well, I know that everything that they have programmed and they have taught us is from a place of love, acceptance, positivity. And if it's not that, it's coming from, the opposing team, since it's fitting, right? Since that's what we're talking about tonight. But we can't do it through trying to change other people to believe in what you believe in. You just have to inspire. Number one, you have to live and lead in that light of doing the work and showing how you can come out of those negative mindsets and those negative belief systems. And then we have to go out there and show others that they can do it themselves. But it all starts with, as Michael Jackson said, and it probably sounds cliche, but with the man in the mirror, right? So we have to do it within ourselves, and that's how we can get through to other people.
Right. I love that. Well, what are your thoughts? I see you writing fervently.
Look, I served 20 years in the military, so I'm
Thank you for your service.
Like, I was willing to put my life on the line for the country, and I sacrificed a lot serving our country. I saw what happened after 9/11. I saw how people rallied to join. The difference in the way, and it wasn't even like Vietnam and coming back, right? The difference in the way that I was treated before and the way that I was treated after. And that really lasted like a decade or more, right? And I don't need this thank yous all the time and stuff like that, but hey, it's nice, right? Yeah. And so it makes you feel good, makes you feel proud. And you would, that song every 4th of July, and I'm proud to be an American, would come on, people be tearing up, listen to it, standing tall, listen to it. Now, what's happened is not only the political divide, but the new generations, they never experienced 9/11. They don't know what it's like to experience a national tragedy. But I will tell you, it's going to happen again. Part of my job at certain points, depending on what location I was in, was defense of the U.S., right? Understanding like who's coming in, what terrorist organizations are trying to filter people in. We don't have control of our borders. And this isn't a political statement. This is a fact. We don't have control over it. People are pouring in for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, because I know what was happening before. I know that there's going to be a terrorist attack. There's sleeper cells that have been in the United States for decades, just waiting for go time, right? Just like they did during 9/11. Unfortunately, I don't know that we get back on track without a tragedy that brings the United States together and says, no, you're not going to come. The wolf ain't going to come to our door. We're the wolf, right? Mm-hmm. We're the ones that are going to take it to your door if that's what we need to do. And I got to tell you, like, I can't remember who said it in there, but like, we're all human. Like, we're all flawed, man. Like, we all have opinions. We all get pissed off at other people when they don't align. Like, we're all rattled by what we're seeing on social media, what we're seeing on the news. We all compare, and that's a thief of joy. Like, we all do all these things.
Right.
But one thing that's getting attention now that needs to get real attention. We don't ever talk about mental health. We don't ever talk about child abuse. We very rarely talk about domestic violence, right? These are like the epidemics nobody's talking about because we're too busy worried about, like, did you get the vax or did you not get the vax? And you're a fucking asshole whether you got it either way. And because the media told me that you are, right? Or do you agree with this or do you agree with that? I don't know that we really, because we turn a blind eye to what's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable, right? Having those kind of conversations. When I hosted that Trauma to Triumph room for over a year, Chris, you were in there weekly.
Yep.
Nobody talked about politics. Nobody talked about, so there was religious, spiritual conversations. Nobody thought you were an asshole if you believed or you didn't believe. Everybody had their opinion. I was pretty vocal with my own, in my belief in God. But what brought us together was, like, we had all been through personal tragedy, and like, how do you help somebody overcome that personal tragedy in order to be the best version of themselves? Like, especially if you've done it. Right. And there's a passion and conviction that comes with that. And so when we stop turning a blind eye to what's uncomfortable and we focus on what's most important, that is the mental health of our country. That's reducing depression and anxiety. That's giving people things to hope for, giving people things to strive for. Again, I don't think we really change it. The only thing we can do right now today is how do we love other people?
Yeah.
How do we show up?
Go deeper on that. I mean, how do we do that?
I think first you got to make sure you love you.
Amen.
You got to love you first. How are you going to love if you don't love yourself? And when you do, it's understanding that, like, hey, somebody's personal opinion or bias or whatever you want to call it has no effect on whether or not they're still a good person. It's just their opinion, just like mine is. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who the hell really knows?
It doesn't really matter, but I want to cut you off right there. What are 3 things people can do to love themselves more? Because I believe in my heart of hearts that if people love themselves more, I'll think about this. What are 3 things that you can do? I will share this. Like during COVID, I gave out a couple of 100 coaching sessions, and I heard this little whisper. You guys know this. I've told you guys this before. I heard this little whisper that said, ask them this question. Yes or no. Do they love themselves? Yes or no? And in my head, I was having this conversation in my head. I'm like, that's a fucking stupid question. Of course, people love themselves. People love themselves too much. I mean, and so I started asking the question. I said, okay, Walt, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you to think too much about it. Do you love yourself? Yes or no? And people probably 80-90% of the time went, well, shit, I think so. I guess so. No. I had so many different answers. Very few people said, yeah, of course I love myself. Yeah. How do you love yourself? Well, I nourish my body. I do this. I do this. Da, da, da. I don't have toxic people in my life. But when I asked people, do you love yourself? Yes or no? And they said no. And I said, do you imagine what your life would be like? Do you imagine who you would attract and what abundance you would have in your life if you just started with that simplicity of taking care of yourself, of nurturing yourself? Oh, I don't have time. I don't have money. I have all these excuses. I'm like, okay, so when is that all going to change? It has to change within you, because to your point, Walt, if we started loving ourselves and we didn't have that hatred and that animosity and that vitriol, and I'm going to give it and I'm going to blame everybody else, what would we be focusing on? How can I help my fellow human being? And that's what I do every single day. You guys know that my legacy is that I want to fight for what's right and what's fair, risk for which that mattered, and make this world a better place for who I am and what I do. And so I believe that my heart of hearts, that people started loving themselves more and started just saying, okay, what's one thing I can do for another individual today? If the whole entire universe, if the whole world started doing this tomorrow and said, you know what, I'm going to turn off the news for 10 days. I'm going to turn off social media for 10 days and I'm going to go out there in the world and I'm going to do one nice thing for a complete stranger. And everybody did that in fucking 2 weeks. How different this world. People be like, oh my God, I'm never going to go back and watch social media. Oh my God, somebody just paid for my Starbucks. Somebody just, the fucking energy and the shift and the propulsion of what would happen. Politics would no longer have control over us. So what are some things that people can do to start loving themselves? Because that is bang on what we need to be focusing on. Then I'm going to throw that to you, Dano, the same question.
All right, cool. Well, I have 3 things written down, luckily, because as you were talking, you were kind of sparking my gears, and that's why we're having this conversation, right? So number 1, you need to understand that you are not your thoughts. With the power of meditation, I have discovered that all the things that I was thinking about during the day, they had no truth behind them. It's when we actually believe in the thoughts that are popping up, then that's when they start to, take control over us, or we start to act on them, right? Because I know this is going to sound pretty wild, but have you guys ever been, in school, or maybe you're out there and you're like, if something serious were to break out right now, what will I do? What would be the plan of action? What would be this? And I know with schools, that's kind of a big thing that they're talking about nowadays. Yeah. So it's like, when you understand, then you come to your senses. You're like, well, that's not going to happen. And then you don't buy into it. So then you're going back to living in the present moment, being with your families, or, going to the gym, or doing whatever it is that you do. That's what you need to understand. You are not your thoughts. All these things that pop into your mind, I forget the exact number, but I think you get over 10,000 or 11,000 thoughts every single day. So when you understand that these things that are popping into your head, you're not them, and you don't have to identify with it, and you can let it pass, then we can start to filter and select the thoughts that are loving, important, and empowering to how we are in an everyday life. So that's number 1. You're not your thoughts. Number 2, we don't have to really believe in other people's belief systems, right? And Chris, what you were just saying, when people don't love themselves, it's not because of the definition that they've given themselves. It's they've believed into what other people have told them. So if you have low self-confidence, it's probably, Chris, I know you said it earlier, with, your mother, she probably didn't feed you the greatest belief systems. I know I have friends in the past before that tried to belittle me, or, tried to feed me false belief systems. And it comes through every single medium. It comes through society. It comes through social media, our family, our friends, our environments, our communities. All of these things, they are constantly trying to feed you false belief systems. So when you understand and you don't believe in it, to say, hey, you know what, I'm not an idiot, I'm actually really smart in XYZ, or hey, you know, I love this birthmark or this beauty mark that's on my face that other people may see it this way, but I'm going to change the definition to see it this way instead, in an empowering fashion. So that's another thing too. Stop believing in these false belief systems that other people have given to you, and instead look at it what it is that you believe, and then yourself. And once you find that answer, and if you like it and you don't like it, you have the power to change it. Like I said, whether you do like that definition or belief that you subscribe to yourself, or you don't, you have the power to change it. And finally, number 3 is we need to understand, we need to be conscious. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting for a second. We need to be conscious, right? And Chris, you said it, what is it that you're consuming? Walt, you said it as well. Well, when we go to look at these news stations or these media outlets, is this the truth or whether it's not? All of these things don't matter. I mean, they do matter because, like you guys, and we've been talking about the entire time, they have an effect on us. But if we're not taking that time to really to figure out, okay, what are our relationships looking like? What's my self-worth and what's my self-talk looking like? Is that positive or negative? If we're not conscious of how we're feeling, then we can't change it, because we're just going to be going through the same motions over and over again. So finally, that's my 3 points. Again, I'll reiterate it. Number 1, you're not your thoughts. You're way beyond the thoughts that you believe in your head. Number 2, don't take on others' belief systems about you, because they're not true anyway. And then finally, we have to be conscious of what's going on in our everyday lives, our relationships, how we're speaking to ourselves, what actions are we actually taking, right? Because if we're not conscious of what we're eating and what we're putting into our bodies and digesting, then we're just doomed to repeat that over and over and over again.
Well said, brother. Well said. I align with everything you said, because it really is, again, it goes back to that R word, that responsibility. Like, how can I do that? What can I do? Like, just take that imperfect action every single day. Wake up tomorrow and sit there and say, okay, what's one thing I could do to nourish myself? What's one thing I could do to change that negative self-talk? Because you're absolutely right. The things we say in our head, I ask people, I'm like, would you talk to the person you love the most the way you talk to yourself in your head? Like, immediate answer is no. I'm like, why is it okay to do it to yourself? And I ask people, like, who do you love the most in the world? And they're like, I love my son. I love my husband. I love my mom. And I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love them? A 10. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to put that back on you. How much do you love yourself? How much do you care for yourself? How much do you like yourself? 5. I'm like, okay, now I want you to consider something. You love that person a 10. You would take a bullet for them, but you love yourself a 5. What are you really giving that person? Are you giving them a 5 or a 10? 5. I'm like, okay, do they deserve a 10? Do they deserve a 5? They deserve a 10. I'm like, okay, so what is it that you're going to do and take responsibility for in your life to make sure that person gets the best part of you, gets the most of you? Because someday is never going to come unless you take that action today. And unfortunately, we've talked about it a few times. Unfortunately, it takes a catastrophe in our lives. It takes cancer. It takes a death. It takes an accident. It takes something for us to go, oh shit, I guess today's the day I'm going to change. We're inviting you guys all out there to be proactive about this. Walt, what are your top 3 things that people can do to love themselves a little bit more?
And I think the first one's my favorite. Speak your truth.
Yep.
And, I did it in a grandiose way, writing a memoir. Yeah. But what I will tell you is we hold so much inside. It is poison for our soul. We are
monsters in my house.
Monsters in my house. Go get the book. Yeah, Amazon. No. We are not speaking our truth, holding things inside, whether it was childhood trauma that we went through, whether it was things that we've experienced negatively as an adult, whether it's just like, man, we're just beat down and tired from work. But we're so worried about being judged, or we're so worried about the stigma that comes from that we don't speak our truth. That doesn't allow you to be authentic to yourself. It adds so much shame. I mean, the feelings you get from that are so complex that sometimes you feel like you're in this pit of despair and you don't have any way to get out. But the way you start to dig your way out, climb your way out, like really live this amazing, brilliant life, is you learn how to speak your truth. And when
can you give us an example of that, maybe in your life where you weren't speaking your truth and then you did, and what the change was?
Oh man, I'll give you a recent example because it goes to the third point I'm going to make today.
Cool.
When I was in corporate, it was bananas during COVID. While everybody else shut down and was stressed about money, I was working harder than I had almost in my whole life. It was so relentless over 18 months. No breaks, no nothing, 5 times the amount of work with the same amount of people. I mean, teams of 500 in Philippines and India and 5 sites it was so overwhelming. And I wasn't really talking about it. Because I'm Captain Resilience, because I didn't want people to think that I'm weak,
Right.
Because that's what men do. We just handle our business and keep rocking and keep going. I ended up having a nervous breakdown. Never had one before in 20 years in the military.
Yeah.
Here I am in corporate having a nervous breakdown, getting pissed at my wife because it's 5:30 and dinner's not done. And she's asking me what I want. I'm like, I make decisions all day. I just feed me some food. I'm hungry. So my reaction to her question had nothing to even do with her.
Right.
She says, what, you okay? And I just started getting teary, and I'm like trying to hold it back even then. And I'm like, and it just hit me. I said, I'm not speaking my own truth. All the things I did to overcome the abuse and feel inspired by my story and utilize it to help other people, I'm not doing in my day-to-day anymore. Because I feel like I need to be resilient and the rock for everybody else. But sometimes the rock has to roll, right? You gotta pick up and move to a new destination. You got to dust yourself off. And I said, I'm not physically or emotionally tired anymore. I was like, I'm tired in the depths of my soul, like who I am as a human being. Like, I can't even do this anymore. We're making more money than we ever have, and I'm more miserable than I've ever been. And it took me 2 months to get back to some level of normalcy. 2 months. Stephanie was like, I don't know if I'm gonna get my husband back at one point, is what she's thinking. You don't joke. Like, you're not this big personality no more. It took me 2 months to get out of the brain fog. And I'll tell you, this is my third thing. And I'll come back to the second one in a second because this goes together. And I went and saw a psychologist, and it was really hard for me to do. I hate to say it because I would tell people to go see therapy if they need it. It was really hard for me to do.
I've done it.
And it's great. It's this great tool we can utilize that like we don't utilize. You know what my homework was every single week? I'm not joking you. Every single week. What are you going to do for fun this week?
I knew it. I knew it. My therapist said the same thing.
Something fun.
Yeah.
And after a month, I said, I'm more tired now than I was the day that I left work. And he goes, you've been in fight or flight mode. You're more like fight mode your whole life. So your bandwidth for like what broke you is pretty long, pretty wide. It took you 44 years to figure it out, for it to finally catch up to you, but it did. And now your mind is slowing down, so you feel how tired your body actually is. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize that. And what I will tell you is like, put down your social media. I'm going to say this is 2. So 1 is speak your truth. 2 is put your social media down. Get rid of the news. That time that you don't do anything that actually helps you become the best version of you, it only leads to anger and visceralness and frustration and anxiety and depression and hurt relationships. Get rid of that. Put it away till after the election, right? Don't even look at it. Instead, use that same time to go work out. I love going for a walk every day. To go for a walk, to just do something fun. I don't know what your fun is. Read a book. Do something fun and build positive relationships. I'm telling you, you won't regret it, and you'll be super happy that you take this break and this like cleanse. It's a soul cleanse for who you're meant to actually become. And then the third thing that I had written down second was be in service to other people, man. Like I got to tell you guys, there's nothing. You've never helped somebody and been sad, mad, pissed, or anxious.
Nope. You always feel 100,000% better.
Great. I go walk at this place called Riparian Preserve almost daily because I live in Arizona, and it actually has like some water and some trees. It's really pretty over there instead of just desert. And I walk past people and I'm like, good morning. Good morning. Some people, Jesus, you know, they
the same thing. Good morning to everybody.
Smile at them. You know who doesn't do that most of the time? The older people. They're like, good morning. How you doing? It's really nice weather out today. The younger people do that. We've been so programmed to be in our phones, to be looking at snippets, that we don't actually take time to be present and view what's around us. And when you're serving, when you smile at people, when you're just nice to people, they will reciprocate that, which will help you. It's like this beautiful, beautiful cycle that happens, and it will perpetuate goodness in your life. And so if you're struggling right now listening to this, if you're on today or you're listening to it later, go find one person to help today. Open the door for somebody, smile at somebody. It doesn't have to be grandiose. Go find one person and help today, and just watch how that will change your mood. And you don't even know, you might have saved that person's life that you actually help, that might be having the worst day of their life in that moment. You don't know. So serve with that in mind, about how you can change the trajectory in somebody's life. And when you do that, man, when you speak your truth, when you start to focus on self-care and maintenance, so that you can be the best version and show up for people the way you're meant to do. And when you serve other people, and when you smile, and when you're giving this infection positivity out, you will get that in return. You do those 3 things, it will change your life. But if you feel like you can't do all 3, Chris, you're going to give 3 in a second. Find one of the 9 that we're giving you and do 1. Just do 1.
Yep.
The next day, do another one. Next day, do another one. Feel which one feels best to you, and then start to just do that one consistently till you have the energy and the mental and emotional capacity to muster a second one, and keep pushing yourself and your boundary to become better.
Couldn't fucking agree more, dude. Every single day, it's my intention to do something with someone to make a little positive dent in their day, whether it's the cashier, if I can make them smile, I can say, how was your day? How have customers been today? If I can crack a joke or share a story real quick and bring a smile to their face. If we can all do that, and we can all do that. That's why I was saying, go back to like, turn off the news, turn off social media, because social media is not social. It's all bullshit. I took a break from social media and 2 people fucking reached out. 2 people said, hey, Chris, how you doing? Right? It's fucking crazy. Like, and we sit there and we go to the social media, but it's again, that validation, that confirmation bias, that comparison. Oh, that person's got it all together. It's a fucking nanosecond soundbite of what they're trying to do to pretend their life is fake. I know people out there who post smiles, and I know they're not fucking happy. I won't mention names, but there's people out there. I know them personally, and they're like, hey, I'm offering this. I'm like, no, you're not. You're full of shit.
Yeah.
But when we go out there and give, I'll tell this quick story. I got into coaching way back in the day because people would come into my office in corporate. I was in corporate like you, Walt. People would come in there for a 5-minute conversation about operations or something like that. But then they would wind up, hey, can I close the door? And they would close the door. Swear to God, it happened so many fucking times. They would sit down and they would start telling me shit that they never told anybody before in their life. And they would get up in an hour, 45 minutes. And they go, oh my God, I can't believe I told you that. I feel like I could tell you anything. And then person after person after person after person kept doing it. And I was like, oh, wow, I have this gift to help people. I have this gift to listen and to understand and not really do much, but ask a couple of questions. And they walk out of there feeling, oh, fucking it. And I was like, all right, I don't need the money. I make great money. So I started Pay It Forward coaching. I saw the movie Pay It Forward with Haley Joel Osment. And I thought that little fucking kid can make a difference. He can throw a pebble in the pond and cast that ripple. I can do the same thing. And I was like, okay, I've got all this in a bag of chips. I'm fucking pretty good at this. I'm going to go out there and coach and change these people's lives. And then I said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm not going to charge them any money. So I'm going to ask them to go do 3 nice things for complete strangers and come back and tell me about it. And I thought, okay, my coaching is going to be the thing, but this is going to be the other thing. And this is going to be like a little part of it. Every single person came back. I said, like, what can I do? I'm like, volunteer at a homeless shelter. Go, if you have, what are your natural gifts? Like, what can you do? I can sing. Go sing for an old folks home. Oh, I love poems. I'll go read poems to an old folks home. I love pets. Go take pets to an old folks home. Whatever it is, give a homeless man a fucking, whatever it might, talk to somebody. Just ask them how they're doing and listen and say, wow, what I heard you say. And time after time after time after time, I probably did it, I don't know, over 100 times. Everybody came back and says, fuck, Chris, I didn't realize how much I have. I've been bitching about the things I don't have, but God, I am so abundant. I have my health. I have my youth. I have my family. I have XXXXX. And here I am bitching about this one thing that I can actually control and change. And that's what I heard time and time and time and time and time again. And that's why my legacy, when I wrote my eulogy, was the fact that I want to make a difference in this world. I want to be remembered for being that guy that said good morning. My son now, ever since he's been old enough to talk, he says hi to people. He said, hi, how you doing? And I'm just like, yes. And everybody's like, oh my God, little boy said hi to me. You hold the door. When I go to the gym, I always, if somebody's like even fucking 10 feet away, I hold the door. And they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. If it's a woman, I said, chivalry is not dead yet, and just people smile and they're just unexpected and they're surprised. So to that point, yes. The thing I'll recommend to you, I have the 5, what I call the 5. It's basically one thing, but it's the 5. And the deeper aspect of this is just remember it in terms like this, guys, AAA, awareness, acceptance, and action. I have to be aware of the situation. I have to accept that the situation is what it is. The 5 words that are very powerful. And then I have to take action on it. Not bitch, piss, and moan, not commiserate, not say someday when everything else is perfect. Take that imperfect action every single day. But the 5 are hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and vitamin D. Pretty much all free. Hydration, sleep, exercise, nutrition, vitamin D. I wear an Oura ring every day. I track my sleep. So many people, I think it's a badge of honor to say, oh, I got 4 hours sleep last night. I'm fucking grinding it. No, you're being stupid because you fucking need sleep. You need deep sleep, restorative sleep. If you're drinking alcohol and you're getting a good night's sleep, oh, I slept all night. Chances are you didn't fucking get REM sleep. You didn't get deep sleep. Your body is not restoring itself. So I wear a ring that actually tells me every single day how I'm doing. And I found out because if I eat or I drink, I wasn't getting deep sleep. So once I started focusing on my sleep, guess what? I started waking up better and I started feeling better and I started doing better. And all these things will feed upon themselves. Nutrition. So many people sit there and say, oh, I don't have time to eat right. I don't know what to make. It's all bullshit. Fucking look on TikTok. There's amazing recipes. Like, how do I meal plan for an entire week? You know, you either pay now or you pay later. I know so many people, and this is the fucking God's honest truth, that said that we're playing the someday game and they progressively put on a little bit of weight, 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 drank a little bit more, drank a little bit more. Now I know somebody who used to be in way better shape than me. He's on like 18 different medications. He's had open heart surgery. He's on so many medications now he can barely work out. He is going to die way faster than I am. So if you think you don't have the time or the energy or the wherewithal or the money or anything, you can fucking eat right. Stop picking up the chips and all that other shit and the sugar and the gluten and everything else. Read a book called Wheat Belly. It's pretty phenomenal what you can do out there. Start feeding yourself better. So now you're sleeping better. Now you're putting better nutrition in your body. Your brain's feeling better. Getting some exercise, getting that oxygenated blood in your system. You start to feel better. Oh my God, I got a spring in my step. Hey, how you doing? Oh my God. You start attracting different things in your life. Vitamin D. I found out, even though I get out and I get in the sun every single day, I found out when I did a vitamin deficiency test, which I recommend everybody do, that my vitamin D was low. And I was like wondering why. I was like, mentally, I was like, oh, I'm positive and everything's good. But God, I secretly feel like shit. And I'm just like having to fight through it. Once I started taking a vitamin D supplement, which I still take to this day, oh my God, I started like, fuck, why do I feel better today? I'm like, oh, my sleep is better. My attitude's better. My nutrition's better. I'm getting like, I'm fucking, doing high intensity training. All those different things, ladies and gentlemen, when you start doing that, and then you combine that with what Walt said and what Dano said, you start finding and attracting more of that same shit in your life. But if you get up every single day and look at this thing and say, oh my God, today's going to suck. Guess what? If I tell you to look around wherever it is that you're doing, everybody do this. Look around your room and say, what is red? That's red. 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 Okay. Now tell me what was blue. Chris, you were telling me what was red. So I was focusing on what was red. That's what we're telling you guys tonight in this conversation, that you are the ultimate person that's in the responsible position to change the narrative, to change what is going on in this world. If you don't want to see a divided world, go out there and create a united world, in your own community. I'm so fired up about this conversation. What are some final thoughts from each of you? We've been going for an hour and 22 minutes. I could probably go for another 3 hours with you guys because I love you so much. What are some final thoughts, Mr. Dano, and what you would like to see everybody walk away and do from this conversation? And then please share your daily dose of Dano TV and anything else you want to promote.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you guys for the opportunity, and to everybody watching for staying on with us and being a part of this great change. I do believe we helped some people out today. I know I've picked up some things from you guys as well. So thank you for having this. But ultimately, it's nice that we are talking about this, and we are, I think Michael Baker has been dropping, a couple of great sounding phrases, keep an attitude, gratitude, and all these great things. But ultimately, if tomorrow we go out there, we're still doing the same things that we have been doing prior to this conversation, then we haven't really changed. And nothing's really going to happen in our own world and in the outer world, inner world, outer world. All this stuff is still going to be the same. So, yes, it's nice to talk about this, but please do one step, one small action tomorrow or even tonight. Give somebody a compliment. I just want to add that to there, as you guys are saying as well. Leave a compliment to somebody on social media. Whatever it is, do it. And don't be afraid about the repercussions or the actions, because when you do things with a place of great intentions and purity, you're just going to receive more of that back, as Christopher mentioned, and as we all know, right? So you can find out more about information about my television show, Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Chris, you kept saying daily, but it's Weekly Dose of Dano TV.
Well, it should be fucking daily, damn it.
Yeah, well, I was, that's taxing too. I think that's a little bit draining. If I were to do that every single day for others, I don't think I would show up for myself as much as I could for others. But hey, I can still look into that as well. So there it is on the screen, Weekly Dose of Dano TV. If you want to reach out to me, ask me any questions, please let me know. I have 2 books coming out One of them is a chapter in an anthology, and another one is a totally raw, original book that I created myself. That's going to be coming out next month. So if there's anything that you might have, any questions, please reach out to me. You can find me here, like I said, on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. But if you don't want to do that on social media, since we just told you guys to maybe take a little bit of a break from it, you can reach out to me at doseofdano@gmail.com. And please, I'd love to hear more about it. I know I have a show coming up this Thursday. Christopher was on it last week. So if you guys want to go check out that episode, please go do it, because that's kind of an extension of what we decided to talk about tonight. So there it is. One more time, Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Reach out to me with anything that you have, and please go actually take some action on all the great things that we talked about tonight.
Amen, brother. Thank you. Mr. Walt fucking McKinley.
Let's go.
Go.
Control the controllables. Guys, like, we're so worried about things that are so far out of the scope of our control. That's ruining our day. That's making us feel anxious, making us feel depressed, making us struggle, hurting the relationships with the people we love the most. Control the controllables. You're responsible and you're in control of your emotions, whether or not you choose to react emotionally or whether or not you choose to respond, and really do something that's helpful. And ask yourself, am I part of the solution or part of the problem? Is what I'm going to write on social media, is the next comment that's going to come out of my mouth, is it helpful or is it hurtful? Yeah. And, my wife and I, we have a Legacy-Driven Marriages is our podcast, one of the top marriage podcasts. And we talk about that a lot, because a marriage is difficult, right? Like, you're living with that person. It's easy to your tone to suck, like to get frustrated at the most petty stuff that causes fractures in relationships. And I've had to learn myself, because of my traumatic past, to learn how to truly respond versus react emotionally. And what I've learned is to ask myself, is what I'm about to say going to move my relationship forward or backwards? We need to ask ourselves that every day. We need to ask ourselves that when we're thinking certain things about ourselves that are defeating. The only thing you can control is you, nobody else. So start focusing on that, because you deserve to be happy. You deserve to feel loved by yourself. You deserve success. You deserve all of these things in life. Then if you're not getting those things, what's stopping you from getting them is what's happening here and what's happening here. And when you can change those narratives, it's like getting on a rocket ship, man, instead of living a life of quiet desperation. So I'd say, if you're going to do anything, just control the controllables, and that's you. Focus on you. I think two things I'd like to leave people with tonight is, one, if you're struggling through trauma, if you know somebody who's struggling through trauma, you want to read the ultimate, victim to victor book. I wear a warrior shirt because we use victim, we use survivor, people who have made it through the hardest stuff, which is really the majority of us. We're damn warriors. We got to start wearing that like a badge of honor instead of running from what we think is a stigma. Yeah. Because the person who needs to hear your story isn't the person who needs to hear mine. And your story might be the thing that changes the trajectory and the legacy of somebody else's life. But first, you got to take on your own. And you want to read something that will inspire you to do that? Get Monsters in My House, A True Story. Christopher will hold it up again. That's the cover. It's on Amazon, #1 bestseller. I self-published and sold over 4,000 copies already. It just continues to sell. And the other thing is, the first 21 episodes of Legacy-Driven Marriages are really about self-improvement, all about what you can do to show up as the best you so that you could be the best you for your relationship. If you're married and you're in relationships and you struggle, episode 22 through 64 now are all about how to work through those hard things in your relationships that my wife and I have figured out in 25 years of being married and 27 years of being together. And so those things fuel your mind, fuel your heart, fuel your soul with things that are going to propel you forward instead of the anchor that keeps drowning you every single day. Those are two things that you can do on top of what these gentlemen have mentioned here in order to live really that inspired life that's going to help other people change theirs, because they're going to ask you, the hell are you doing? How are you so happy all of a sudden? Like, what happened to you? You're like, let me tell you about it. You ever met that person who, for me, like, found Jesus, and they're just like, they want to tell everybody about Jesus, and they're so excited, and they're, oh my God, let me tell you about it. And they're almost like over the top with it.
Right.
Because they know how that changed them. I'm passionate about what I speak about because I know how healing from trauma and seeing the gifts it's given me as superpowers has helped elevate my life past what I ever thought. Dano has done the same thing. Christopher, we've all had conversations about this personally, so I know what you gentlemen have been through too. And so take the advice that you heard tonight, make some changes, invest in positive content, and most importantly, control the controllables. And that's you. Stay blessed, everybody.
Amen. And where can people, for listening on the podcast, where can they get a hold of more content from Mr. Walt McKinley?
Really, that's where you can find it at. So we have our YouTube channel. You
But say it out loud. I mean, people can't see that what's on the screen.
Marriages on YouTube. You can also go to Legacy Driven Marriages on Instagram, or you could just follow me on Facebook. I know quite a few guys that run here. I'm already connected with on Walter McKinley. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I'm wearing a Warrior shirt and all of that stuff. And then, like I said, go to Amazon, grab a copy of the book, or maybe send it to somebody who you know actually will really need it. And, you know, be the change, man. Be the change.
Amen. WaltMcKinley.com for you guys listening on the podcast. McKinley is McKinley, McKinley, WaltMcKinley.com. I have read the book. I can vouch for it. It's an amazing book. These are amazing gentlemen. This conversation is just the tip of the iceberg of what it is that we can do in your life. So I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for coming on here and sharing your soul and sharing your passion and your love for this country, love for humanity. Together we can make a difference every single day. I'm going to place you guys backstage. I'm going to finish out the show, but don't go anywhere so I can still yak with you guys for just a minute.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having us. See you guys in the next one.
Love you guys. There we have it. I want to catch this comment. Chris says, you are the best one. You are one of the best interview events. Love your guest. Thank you, Walt and Dano. Much wisdom shared. Hugs and love. Thank you, Patricia. Patricia is one of my dear friends and one of my mentors, truth be told. She was one of the people that said, hey, Chris, instead of writing the other books, write your book. It's Just You and Me, Kid. It is going to be traditionally published now. I haven't been talking about it much on the podcast because I was hyping it up forever, but the gentleman that was supposed to be on the show tonight, he is going to be publishing the book. So we are going through the editing process again. But thank you, Patricia, for being here. Patty, for being here. Thank you, each and every one of you guys, for being here tonight and part of this conversation, whether you're watching live. I know a lot of you guys watch and listen to it in the morning on the East Coast. A lot of you guys are listening to it on podcasts all over the world. Listen to what Dano and Walt said and I said. Really think about this. The crux of it is, am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? Again, going back to that confirmation bias, am I just looking for validation for my opinion? And if you're posting stuff, like I had a friend of mine on Facebook today, he posted, I'm a Trump supporter. I love Trump. If you don't like that, please delete me. Or if you need a reason to, please delete me. And I wrote back and I said, why on earth would you post this? Because I asked that question. I want to know, what is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to thin the herd? Are you trying to get more people to buy into your philosophy? What is it? Why? What is that going to serve? And like what we said at the beginning of the show, if you guys came in halfway through the show, go back to what we said at the beginning. Ask yourself, how is this serving me? How is this serving me? How is this serving the people that I love the most in my family? Is being stressed out and frustrated and angry all the time? Is that what I want to teach my kids? My son knows that I'm all about love and humanity. Black, white, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, transgender, vax, no vax, Trump, Kamala, Biden, whatever fucking label you want to put on it. I see love in humanity. That's my choice. That's my perspective. And truth be told, when I was on Dano's show last week, after the show, we always have a little post-show conversation. I was telling him that I was about to snap. I was about to say, I don't give a fuck, and start posting some shit. But then through the conversation, I was mostly positive, but there was an aspect of me that was like, fuck it, I'm just going to join the party. I'm just going to join the party. I don't give a shit anymore. And I've decided not to, because together, when we focus on ourselves and we focus on how is my contribution going to impact the world. And look at it this way. This is what changed it for me. I was at a funeral back in 2008, and I thought, if I died tomorrow, and we know it could happen anytime. If I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And at that point, I thought 10 or 15 people would show up with a bunch of booze and Motley Crue and Bon Jovi records and talk about all the stupid shit Chris did. Oh my God, remember that time he did this? Oh my God, remember that time again? Oh my God. Da, 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 da. Oh yeah, he was a 7th grade homeless dropout that changed the world. I didn't want the postscript on my legacy to be that. I didn't want to be just known for that person. And that's when I went home and I wrote my eulogy. And I encourage each and every one of you to write your eulogy, because what do you do then? You wake up every single day and say, okay, what can I do? How can I set the intention to fulfill this legacy that so should it be my last day? Will my son be proud? Will my family be proud? Will my friends be proud? Will I have shared my gifts with the world? Or will I have just squandered it all, hoping, wishing, and praying that someday, which is not on a fucking calendar, someday, then I'll do this. Someday I'll be happy when. How about just be happy right now? Again, going back to gratitude, that's the cornerstone of my life. I wake up every single day and I set my intentions and I say what I'm grateful for. And as I'm going throughout my day, if I find myself in a bitchy mood, I'm grateful for the fact I have a big screen TV. I'm grateful for that I have amazing people in my life who will challenge me and question me. I'm thankful for the dry erase board. I'm thankful for my cat sleeping on my printer, whatever it might be. Because again, where that focus goes, the energy flows. Again, like what I said before, the reticular activation system. If you're focusing on what's red and I ask you what's blue, right? So how about focusing on the gratitude? How about waking up and setting that intention? How about being a part of the solution? But I encourage you tonight to go back and listen to this again, not for the vanity, not for anything else, but take down notes. And again, sticky notes. I don't know how much they cost, $5, whatever. Take a sticky note and set out and put 3 sticky notes on your fucking monitor. I have sticky notes on my monitor. See right there. I won't show you what it is, but it's something that I got to work on. So you have sticky notes on your monitor, and every single day, like, hey, have I done that today? Have I lived up to my purpose? Have I done the goodness for the world? Again, going back to the politics and everything else, your posts are not going to change anybody's mind, right? What you can do is you can change humanity by being that positive example, by showing love and not fear. What are you afraid of, right? When you think about anything that's happened in the past, have you survived it? Have you thrived through it? Are you grateful in some ways that it happened because it helped you learn lessons? Right? I was just sitting there telling somebody the other day, they heard my story for the first time and they're like, oh my God, how are you so positive? I'm like, because I choose to. I said, I went through all those experiences to become the man I am today. Had I not gone through those experiences, chances are I would be somebody different. So I'm grateful. The Hero's Journey on YouTube, watch it. The Joseph Campbell story, again, free. Watch an hour and 23 minutes of that shit. It'll change your perspective about why you're here. And stop running from your problems and your challenges and everything, and run towards them, because on the other side of that, yeah, is it going to be hard? Yeah, is it going to be challenging? Yeah, is it going to be is it going to suck? Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you, but on the other side of it, you're going to be like, holy shit, I'm a badass motherfucker. I've got grit. I've got soul. I'm capable of way more shit than I ever thought I was. And you say that shit to yourself, then you have a bigger meaning and a deeper purpose. Don't let everybody else suck you in. Right? You're like the 5 people you're around the most. Do they provide value? Do they provide challenge in your life? Or do they just support and validate your position and where you're at? Think about that. I love each and every one of you guys. Daniel, so fucking the backstage guy, he says, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I reached out to you. I'm here. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Nelly. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. I'm not sure what your name is, but damn your privacy on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, all you beautiful people, for being here tonight, being a part of this conversation and helping us make this world a better place. Because if not for us, for our kids. And I really believe, and I'll leave you guys with this, Walt said something about future generations and stuff like that. I truly believe that the kids of today, not my son who's 8 years old, but the younger generation, I think they're looking at this and going, wow, I don't want to be like mom and dad when I get older. I don't like how the politics are. I think the kids of today are going to be the future generation that says, no. Because I look at the kids, I see kids all the time, black, white, they don't give a shit. They barely even, my son, when he goes to the playground, he'll find a friend immediately and he doesn't even ask them their name. I don't need to know your name. You're just a good person. Let's go play. So I think the future generation is going to be the change that we need to see. And perhaps, like we said tonight, perhaps we have to go through some hard times. Perhaps we have to go through some challenges. And if those do happen, Here's what I encourage you to do, because this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to reach out to my community, the people, my next door neighbors who I don't even know their names. And I'll go, hey, do you need some food? I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a life coach. If you need any positivity, let me help you out. If you need anything fixed, I'm a pretty good handyman. I'm going to reach out to my community and say that there's people here that care about you. So if we do have trying times, don't be a part of that. Be a part of the solution and help show how great we are as a humanity throughout every part of this world. Whether you're Israeli, whether you're Palestine, whether you're Ukrainian, whether you're Russian, whether you're Chinese, Japanese, whatever we're all beautiful people. I truly believe that. I've been all over the world. We're all beautiful people. Let's make sure we're acting like that. I love you guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Go to rawunscripted.com. You can find it Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. Tune in. And we'll be back here again next week, next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live here on the video cast, where you can join us and be a part of this conversation. So feel free to put in the comments what it is your ideas are that we can do to help lift up humanity, how we can be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I would love to see those, and I'll comment back on those. But meanwhile, go out there and enjoy your moments. Go out there and love your family and love yourself, okay? I'm going to be here next week.